Good evening, Hampstead. Today is Tuesday, May 9th, 2023. Calling to order the regular meeting for the school board agenda. Melissa, would you mind taking the roll call, please?
Certainly. Jay Giard?
Here.
Erin Pellegrini?
Here.
David Smith?
Here.
Carl Hubner? And also Andy Cabarrus. Are you calling in by phone?
Here.
Thank you, Andy. And could you also let the public know if there's anyone else in the meeting in the location with you?
There is no one else with me.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Andy. All right, if I can ask everybody to stand for the pledge, and maybe Carl can lead us.
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Oh, sorry. Get choked up? Yeah. Got a little bit of a cough here. Sorry. Board members, in your packet you have two sets of meeting minutes from the April 11th regular meeting and non-public meeting. I'm just going to take a break for water. All right, board members, sorry about that. You can take a look at the meeting minutes, and I'll be looking for a motion to approve.
I will go ahead and make a motion to approve the regular meeting minutes from April 11th, 2023, as well as the non-public session from April 11th, 2023.
I'll second that.
All right. Melissa, would you mind taking the roll call on that?
Mr. Giard?
Yes.
Dr. Hubner? Mr. Cabarrus?
Yes.
Mrs. Pellegrini?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries.
All right. Then we have public comments. Any public comments?
So I just noticed a gentleman in the audience. I didn't get a chance to ask him if he wanted to make any public comments tonight. No, Chairman Smith, we have none tonight.
All right. Wonderful.
Thank you.
All right. So first up is school highlights. We're going to invite Dr. Cheney to come up and talk about HCS.
Will that help you? That's okay. I've got a big enough teacher voice. You can hear me okay?
Test.
Oh,
We're good.
all right. Thanks, everyone. Hey. All right. Thank you. Is that better? All right. So thank you for having me this evening. I just want to share some highlights from the Hsd Central School. We have been very busy this spring, and we are in full swing of all of our end of the year activities are just beginning and ready to go. One of the things that I want to highlight for you is our scheduling task force. As part of the strategic plan, we formed a scheduling task force, and their work is now complete. The team was working to really achieve protected core instruction time, as well as making sure we had lots of enrichment opportunities for all of our students. So some of the features of our new schedule include a protected morning meeting time. So for the first 20 minutes that students are in our school each day, they'll be spending that time getting ready for their day with their classroom peers, their classroom teacher, and any additional staff that may be visiting. This is really going to allow kids to get their day started on the right foot, as opposed to coming in and immediately dispersing to their many services and opportunities. There will be 90 minutes daily of literacy and math instruction, as well as an additional what we call a WIN time, which stands for What I Need, 2 to 3 times per week. Our Spanish program will be 30 minutes a week for every student in grades K through 4. Next year will be the first year that that program moves up to 4th grade. And so as a result of that, we did have to reduce chorus now to every other week in the grades 3 and 4, as opposed to every week. And we're still looking for ways to integrate the unified arts right into that core content for students to make it a whole child approach and pretty seamless for our kiddos. One of the beloved traditions that came back this spring was the first grade mall. Our first graders are learning about counting by 10s and 1s. And what happens is it's this interesting yard sale type event where kids bring in things from home. They're price marked, and each first grade classroom is its own store at the mall. The mall comes equipped with an arcade and everything. And they won't let you into Mr. Vestucci's room if you don't have your 5 cents. But essentially the kids get to sell the wares, and kids bring in interesting items and leave with even more interesting items for their homes. And this year the mall raised about $92, which the first graders voted to donate here to the middle school's Old Salt Box Pantry to support the families in Hampstead. This spring, our second graders went to visit Pinkerton Academy. They got to watch TheaterWorks' production of The Magic School Bus. I had the honor of going on that trip with them, and they were in awe of the size of the auditorium and the school, and they're all whispering to me, I'm gonna go to high school here. You're gonna go to, me too. And they were so excited because they knew some bigger kids at the high school. So it was a nice connection. Spring means concerts and lots of celebration. Back in April, we had a Beatles concert hosted by our 3rd graders. It was a lovely evening where the kids were singing some of the top hits. The evening performance, people were on their feet, singing along, tapping their feet. This was integrated not only with our music program, but also our art program. You could see beautiful banners of the various songs and music up on the walls. And our technology teacher also supported this program, working with the kids we have a crosswalk on our property, cross the Hampstead Road instead of Abbey Road, and made new album covers, as well as making collages based on Beatles cover art. So a big thank you to Mrs. Stark, Mr. Torelli, and Mrs. Garside for collaborating to make that evening a success. The following week, we hosted our multicultural show. Also a credit to Mr. Torelli, Mrs. Stark, and Mrs. Garside. This year, our students learned all about the countries of Vietnam, Ireland, Spain, and Jamaica. They've been learning about the culture, geography, music, and tradition of these various countries. Again, this was a showcase that integrated dancing, singing, art, and technology. Our 4th graders celebrated their wax museum again this year, where they were bringing all of those historical figures to life. Students represent scientists, athletes, artists, musicians, and this unit really does encompass research, informational reading, note-taking, and public speaking, because students become the character, and we were so pleased to invite parents back in this year to see their students do this. They push the button and the kids come to life, and they talk as if they are the historical figure. Pinkerton Academy came to Central School and visited the 4th grade classrooms in March. The Pinkerton students were teaching about the structures of cells, and students had the opportunity to look at cells under a microscope. They learned to label basic parts of the cell, and they even got a sweet treat at the end where they decorated cookies with frosting to represent models of cells. And the Pinkerton students really blew their minds at the end when they were extracting DNA from a strawberry. So Mr. Breda and his students came to visit, and we were very appreciative. Just a couple more things for you this evening. The UNH soil tent was at the Central School. This is part of the Globe Project, and it really lets kids dig in, if you will, to the science behind the land around us. There was a collaboration with Mrs. Wise Carver and Mrs. Garside where there were actual tools for kids to dig into the dirt. They learned about coring. They learned about the various levels of our soil. And there was even a pop-up tent where kids could really go into the soil and see what lived in there and what existed. I'm really excited to talk to you about a project called One School, One Book. One School, One Book is going to be a school-wide community and family event and opportunity where every student and every person in our school actually will receive a copy of the same text. It's called A Boy Called Bat. And we will read that together over the next 3 to 4 weeks. Teachers will be reading this aloud, families can be reading it at home, and it's an opportunity for a shared literacy experience to develop students' literacy understanding, as well as their interest and excitement around reading. I actually have a book for each of you guys tonight as well, if you'll join us in our read. And this will end on June 8th with a culminating event in the evening at the Central School. So more details to come. At the bottom of my report tonight are some of our upcoming events that I hope that you can join us for. And one that I would like to highlight is that we are in the midst of Staff Appreciation Week, and I just want to make sure that I say a big thank you to our fantastic staff and our dedicated educators who come to school every day and work with our kiddos. So that's all I have. Do you have any questions for me this evening?
I just had this is really loud. I had a question on, could you elaborate more on the part on the scheduling task force of, that you're continuing to integrate, look for ways to integrate the unified arts? So what's happening with that currently?
Yep. So our Unified Arts team does a great job integrating together, like I shared with some of our pieces. So what I'd like to find are more opportunities for our students to be involved in all areas of their curriculum in the arts. So when they're studying about regions, for example, are there ways that we can make connections with other other of our unified arts? Or when they're learning dances, is that a great place for PE to step in and teach some of those pieces? So finding more opportunities. Yep.
Just on that same paragraph there, 90 minutes daily of literacy and math, is that 45 minutes each, or is it 90 minutes each?
90 minutes each. Okay. I'm glad you asked. Yep.
Okay, thank you. There's other questions? So I'll just say, and I might ask Mr. Shirley to turn around so I can talk behind his back. But, I love reading this and seeing this because, when we came to this town, one thing that got us was, it was more than just the math. It was more about, it was not maybe as equal to the arts. So it's great to see everything happening here. So definitely want to send appreciation for all those involved in leading that. I know just this weekend, talking to families that their kids have moved on, they still talk about all the arts and everything that's been offered. So it's not something that is forgotten. So it's definitely a good thing to hear. I won't need this book. I've got 2, and we've already started reading that. But it's a great program. I love hearing about this. And my kindergartner and my pre-K are excited about this book. So it's great to see.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you. Shannon, talk to us about what's going on in Pinkerton.
Okay, so, it is really loud. So we're getting very close to graduation, and I feel so official tonight with the clip-on microphone. We can feel the end of the year coming, and tonight in the Stockbridge Theater is Community in Theater Making. It's a student-written and produced series of plays spreading awareness about mental health. The LCA is hosting a cornhole tournament May 13th. I'm very excited to be there and see it happening. I love cornhole. May 10th, tomorrow night, the National Honor Society induction ceremony is going to be held in the Stockbridge Theater. Next Tuesday, May 16th, students will take the state-required science testing. Whoop, whoop. And then thankfully Wednesday, there's an early release day. There's also a band concert, a jazz band concert that Wednesday night. The Astros United Club hosted a Catwalk for a Cause fashion show, raising $1,500 for a local organization, Reach One, Teach One, Love One, changing the stigma of mental health. It was very fun to see lots of the local police department officers. They dressed up, got all fancy for it. It was fun to watch. Decision Day was on May 1st. It's always so exciting seeing where all the seniors are going, what they're going to do with the rest of their lives. And then Junior Prom is May 20th. So students, make sure you have your physical school IDs or back of the line. And I think that's all I have.
All right. Thank you, Shannon. Any questions for Shannon? All right. Good luck for the rest of the, not too much longer, and summer's here. All right. So now we're going to turn over into current business. We've got Superintendent Thompson to talk about safety and security.
Thank you. So at the April 11th school board meeting, the administration presented to the school board in a non-public session a list of security enhancements that we would undertake. And just to provide a brief update, some of the items that were presented to the board in non-public, we can't disclose publicly because they're related to student safety. But in general, it included a commitment to ongoing professional development. And one activity included ALICE training for the school board. And this evening at 6 o'clock, the board met and were trained by Officer Winter. And I guess I would ask Chairman Smith if he wanted to talk a little bit about the training this evening.
Yeah, just I'll start off by definitely other board members, what they heard and what they learned. First, a huge appreciation to Officer Steve Winter for taking the time to walk us through and describe it and answer a lot of questions and talk about the genesis of ALICE all the way through its implementation and how we've done it here. And the goal of what I thought was really great was the goal of our district is beyond our teachers. It's all administration. It's anyone working in the cafeteria, janitors, and more. Just everybody to have this training because we're all impacted if this ever happens in our school. Hey, Andy, do you mind put on mute? Sorry. And then, I just thought it was really informative about, what level of training and what level of overview for different ages of students. So that was great to see, as well as the book that's been written to help children comprehend this. So, board members, if there's anything else that you want to speak to.
Yeah, I guess I just really want to thank really our staff. And I mean, I was sort of left sitting there kind of like, I can't believe this is what they have to go through and have to think about this, and the lengths that they'll go to get trained to make sure that our students are safe is really appreciated. And it was eye-opening, actually, so I appreciate it.
I just wanted to say I really appreciate Officer Winter and just the sentiment that the police department will do whatever it takes to make sure the students are safe and that they're taken care of. And it made me proud. So.
All right. The other thing I learned, one good thing was, by having our students train in ALICE, it's also what they do at Pinkerton. So that way, it's just seamless as it moves up, as they move up into the Pinkerton, know what's going on there. So, so a lot of good information was shared. So.
Yeah, and in addition to professional development, we also, as part of our security enhancements, discussed the entryway of the central school. And again, there's a sense of urgency with this project, knowing that the proposed building project did not move forward, and that the safety and security of the main entryway is something that needs to be addressed right now, even if that is a short-term solution. And so Mr. Dowd was going to present an update, which I believe we can do in public, but I would just ask if there are specific questions related to Mr. Dowd's update, that we would address those issues in a non-public session.
Yep.
So Melissa has a document, a confidential document to hand out.
I assume this will be something that will be shared with Mr. Cabarrus upon his return, if you'd like.
I can do it now if you'd like.
All right. Andy, you'll get an email from Mr. Dowd about what this is that he's handing out. Thank you, Melissa.
Sounds great. Thank you.
Should be getting it now.
Thank you.
Are you going to speak to any of this, Mr. Dowd, or is
I will.
anything that you wanted to go over? Just if we have any questions, we'll go to non-public.
I don't have too much to go over with this, aside from if you wanted to go into non-public or if you're comfortable speaking about the subject matter. I'll leave it to the board, really.
So board members, what you have, these are what we've looked at before as options. This
Plus
time with
one.
pricing.
Plus one.
I'm sorry?
Plus one scenario. There's an additional scenario there.
Gotcha.
Scenario 4.
I guess I'm going to ask a general question on this. Is there a scenario that is more likely or more recommended that you're going, which way you're leaning?
Not particularly, no. No, I think it's good to get board feedback on these matters.
Sorry?
But it's good to let you know about the budgetary implications, see if there's any feedback from the board on these matters.
I don't have any different feedback than I did on the last meeting. So I think it's really in superintendent's hands as which way you're going to go, unless there's any strong input from any of the board members who want to go non-public to share.
Trying to understand that one a little bit better.
It's right here, if you look at this. So
Yeah.
That is the additional one. That's the one we had not reviewed at the last meeting.
if you look at on the back, describes what it is. I'd say for me, whichever way, between yourself and the Jeffs, et cetera, and the, Dr. Cheney, I think either one is a good option. Any board members feel otherwise, and we should go into non-public to discuss? No? Mr. Cabarrus, did you get the email?
You made a mute, David.
Hmm?
You made a mute.
Yep.
Sorry, looking for it.
we'll give you a minute to take a look at it and see if you have any questions or anything you think we need to go to non-public.
David, could you let Andrew know that scenario 4 is new?
In scenario 4 is new.
It's a different color.
I don't have any feedback that's different from the last meeting.
Okay. Was there any questions or comments from you, Mr. Thompson? I think we can move forward.
Yeah, I just, want to reiterate that this is a temporary solution, right? That until there is some type of renovation, addition with a new main office or some major reconfiguration, this is a temporary solution that looks to address some safety concerns, but simply moving forward with this proposal is not going to solve our safety concerns at the central school. And I just think it's important that the community realizes that we continue to be concerned about the main entryway at the Hsd Central School.
Agreed. And that'll be something we'll be discussing as we understand more of what we'll do next year and follow-on years. As far as disclosing to the public, I would think that no later than our first board meeting coming out of the summer, we would disclose this, what exactly is going to happen.
Absolutely.
Okay.
To the extent that is appropriate.
Well, I think that some things about like what parents will.
The new protocols.
Protocols will be that'll be
Absolutely.
communicated out, et cetera, before school starts.
Absolutely.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Any other questions, comments from anyone? All right. I think we'll move on to the next discussion. HCS edition plan design discussion. So from the last board meeting, we had said, hey, we have a general direction which way we want to go. We did have a meeting. There was a number of us that had a meeting with the construction committee, the project management, and the architects. We discussed what was on the table of looking at what the cost of 4 classrooms is, what the cost of 2 classrooms, and then the cost of the 6 classrooms. What we got more into the discussion this past meeting last week was looking at what is part of those plans, as the 4 classrooms had been already pretty much designed for the past warrant article that failed. So there wasn't a lot to change there per se. We were dusting off the 2 Cove classrooms and discussing what's in those as far as anything that we may want to cut out, anything that needs to be revised. So they better understood what we're asking for. So what they're doing right now, and we have a meeting in about a month, is they're revising the price based on a number of items that we had either said you can take out or we learned that we did not need. So board members, there's a few changes that I want to make sure that you're understanding of what's either not in the plans or what's been taken out. First one was that in the quote that they gave us, that was ballpark pricing, was they were under the impression we were going to move the library next to the Cove classroom, so we took that out, so that would reduce pricing, because we're going to leave the library where it is. That make sense? Any questions on that? All right. The next one was there were bathrooms in the Cove classrooms that we said we do not need. So that would drop the price down. That will take those out. The third one, which can be a bit of a topic here, but what the action was to look at with 4 new classrooms and or the 2 classrooms, do we need sprinklers? By code, do we need those? The answer was from Jeff Mackey talking to our fire department and talking to others, we do not need to put sprinklers in there by code. What they did ask is if we do not add sprinklers to, Mr. Dowd, help me out here, they added a fire hydrant in front of the central school.
Install a fire hydrant.
What's that?
Install a fire hydrant in front.
Right. So that is something that we're looking at not having, to see what that price is by not having that in the classrooms. That you would still have the fire hydrant at the front of the school, so that way they can give us the pricing in June so we can continue to evaluate. So in June, we will come back and look at more detailed pricing based on these changes, based off dusting off the 2 Cove classrooms, and we'll be able to give the board an update after that meeting in June.
So we'll be able to see what the price is with sprinklers and without?
I think at this point, they would just be pricing without. If they're not needed, they would price them without. So,
I
but
think if we didn't make that clear, we should ask them what would ballpark for sprinklers, so we can evaluate that. So we did not take that action, we just should do that as well.
So this actually raises a great point. What they're going to be coming back with in a month is going to be a final concept design for the board to review and approve before moving forward, so that we can get those contingencies in there. Pricing is not expected until up to 6 weeks afterward, which I believe takes us into midsummer, July, in that area.
Okay.
So you'll have an idea what the scope is of the work that we're going to be asking for pricing on, if that makes sense. So we're taking the library out, as David said, but these little things that come up, like, can we have pricing on that? I don't like this. Does this make more sense to try and make changes to the plans before it's being priced out, so that we're sure what it is that we're pricing? So Cove classrooms have been concept, I think, and now they're doing a little bit more design so they can price based on that design.
Right, and because we didn't really have that, costed this past time, so this will, help them get us better pricing. The goal here is that as we approach budget season, now again, budget season really starts in August, we can understand what it is that we're looking for to be either part of the budget or some other way of funding for those 4 and or 6, 2 additional classrooms, depending on price. The goal here is if we took away a few things, we might be able to get more than 4 classrooms, but at minimum, the goal of having 4 classrooms.
Pricing seems to be a little bit more fluid in terms of actually making a commitment on what it is that we'll be looking at for pricing. And I'm not sure, Jason, if you've seen it, but it seems inflation's under control, and it's at least predictable, where there's been some hesitation on the last project to price it because it was really a wild card. But there seems to be more confidence to be able to give us that pricing early, which I think really opens up a lot of doorways for finalizing the project early and being able to work through the budget process a lot earlier.
Right. So, any questions on that from board members? Good. All right. Moving on. Next topic, one that's going on in the state right now, cybersecurity audit update. So this one would be from our Director of Technology, Joe Dion.
Good evening, board members. The Hsd Technology Department had a cybersecurity audit on our April break. This was conducted by CISA, the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, which is a division of Homeland Security. This audit was planned for back in early December of 2022. The auditors reviewed our internal policies and procedures, as well as our logical and physical security around our data centers. We will be debriefed in the near future with a full report on all of their findings. Cybersecurity awareness is a very hot topic currently, especially in the news with the events of the Nashua District and the City of Dallas dealing with the aftermath of the Royal ransomware. And I want to let you know that our technology department is taking the necessary precautions to mitigate such attacks. We follow the NIST guidelines, and we are also part of the MSISAC, which is Multi-State Information Sharing and Analysis Center, so we get zero-day notifications on exploits. Do you have any questions? We will have more information once we get debriefed.
No questions.
I have no questions.
Very timely.
Yeah,
Thank you very much.
And can I just add, while we have Mr. Dion here, that as I think the board is aware, we are now fully staffed in our technology department. And I think we're really seeing the benefit of having a full staff so that Mr. Dion can focus on these critical issues such as cybersecurity. We're also getting ready to roll out the new website. We've also expanding our social media presence onto Instagram. So it's really great to see Mr. Dion being able to focus on some of these much larger projects that Admittedly, a year ago, we just didn't have the bandwidth to do that, so I appreciate your work.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it, Mr. Thompson. Thank you, board.
Nice job. Thank you. All right. Next up with Mr. Dowd on the 2021 financial audit update.
And in front of you, you'll find a copy of a letter for communication from Plodzik and Sanderson, as well as a copy of the 21 audit. Go through some of the highlights. This is again from 21. We were expecting some findings with respect to, we have some repeat findings, I think, with respect to policies, which I think that they've identified before. We had some student activity funds are always difficult, nothing dramatic. It's not really a huge finding. You can see the findings there on the letter from Plodzik on page 2 and 3. Just to let everyone at this table know, one of the sticky points that has come up and identified as an audit risk are gift cards. Purchase of gift cards by the school district. And so the reason for that is because you can purchase a bunch of gift cards, let's just say for Sunshine Club, let's just say theoretically to support Thanksgiving baskets or something, and as a market basket gift card. Without documenting that gift card was purchased and who it went to, there's always a risk. So there was an incident at one of the municipalities a few years ago involving that, so audit here is requesting that we refrain as much as possible from purchasing gift cards. We do have a process in place to document that on the gift card end. It's a nuance, it's a little odd, I pointed out, because it might come as a surprise to some people that that's even an issue. Something that they found, some pretty strong language in recommending not purchasing gift cards, but there are situations that is appropriate, and we will continue to make sure our controls are implemented so we can document the purchase and disposition of those gift cards. In fact, if you recall, when we have even when we have any gift card that's given out from the board, I'm always chasing them for a signature that they received it. So, in addition to that, in the audit report itself, page 1, you'll see that we have a summary of opinions, all unmodified with the exception of the governmental activities, which speaks to the fixed assets, which we're looking to on board in the 23 audit. Otherwise, the opinions are unmodified. And from the 21 year, I have some financial highlights on page 5 you can go through. You can see a little bit of how in that particular year we had additional revenue, where it came from. Part of it, $307,000, was in aggregate the amount that we received in revenue that was higher than we had anticipated, and we had a health trust receivable and additional CAD aid received, which was offset by lower Medicaid reimbursements. And you can go through and see what we did this year. This was the year that we approved $500,000 from unassigned fund balance to be used directly for the 60s Wing project, which it was, and you held $250,000 as unencumbered fund balance. We reduced taxes by almost $1.2 million going into the 21-22 year. The last page of the audit has their communication of a significant deficiency involving grants and grant management, largely surrounding the reconciliation and reporting of the grants. We've revamped all of our processes internally on those. We have, I guess, consistent grant and project managers, which is very helpful, most of whom are sitting at the table right in front of you, which is very, very helpful. We had a number of the grants go through the hands of 3 or 4 project managers between the different shifts and staffing that we've had until we arrived where we are currently, and that makes it very, very difficult to report. So we've reported that. It's not a loss of revenue to the extent that it is just an issue of cash flow. We want to see these grants reported timely, and for the most part, our big grants are funded through Tara Linda's project grant owner, Jessica and Nicole, and they're all very good with their reporting. We've created a much better dialogue between the 2 departments as well to be able to make sure that we know and what we're expecting to be reported and that we're receiving that in revenue on a timely basis. So that's it. The 22 audit, really for all intents and purposes, appears to be wrapped up. I believe that we had a commitment for June to get that report out, and I already have 23 preliminarily scheduled, and I should say that. I have 23 scheduled for their preliminary audit work June 20th. So we're in good shape. I don't know if there are any questions on the audit on.
What about the gift cards? That wasn't a finding in the previous audit that was just completed, correct? That's a new
I don't think, if it was not, the language is not quite as strong.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's an oddball because we do have, situations where it might make sense to offer some type of positive reinforcement for different functions around the district. And so we just have to be a little bit more cautious about who's purchasing and that they're documented.
Are we putting any action in place based on their findings?
I think the preference now is no to purchasing of gift cards, and that if gift cards are purchased, we do have in place a receipt type system for them. So that's been the change that's been made. I don't know how well that had been communicated in the past.
Okay.
So, but now they're aware that they have to get a receipt for it, which is tough sometimes based on, based on what the gift certificate is for.
And when you're talking about gift cards, you're not talking about $200, you're talking about like $20, right? $5.
Maybe
Yeah.
20.
So-
It's not typically a lot.
That's Can you speak a little bit about looking on the page 50 about the grants management?
Which page? Oh, last page, second last page?
Last page,
Yep.
second to last page.
Yep.
About the findings there around grants management.
So what they're speaking to here specifically is that we had a particular grant, 98 grants, a large grant, had a period of 8/12/20 to 9/30/22, and we had two reportings. The project manager had submitted 2 reports on that over the course of that grant. Now, what I would like to see is reporting done monthly. I think what audit would like to see is reporting done monthly. And what that means is that we go in and say, look, we set up a project with the Department of Ed for a particular grant. Here's the expenditure associated with it. The expenditure was made in April, May, whenever it was, and then they approve our request for repayment reimbursement of those requests, of those payments that had previously gone out. So in that case, they had reported twice, and that was one of the grants that had, I think, 3 or more grant managers, which makes it really difficult.
Yeah.
And I would also like to add that the person that was the grant manager when this opinion came back is no longer the manager of this particular grant. And the individual who is managing the grant is doing a phenomenal job with the timeliness of their reporting.
That's good. I appreciate that for sure.
So we're in much better shape. We've implemented new processes and procedures, and it's tough. They just can't go back and test it, but it's very labor intensive, and that's okay. I think I don't want to call it free money. It's never free, but if we have to expend some resources to support the receipt of those funds, it's certainly worth it.
All right. And at this time, there's no action for this, correct?
If you wanted to accept the report as a formality, I guess you could. I don't know if Andy has that, so Andy, I apologize. Did he get a copy? Okay. Send a copy over.
On to the 2022 audit. Any update on that beginning?
I think 2022 is pretty much complete. All field work is done.
Okay.
So we're talking about 22 to 23. So this is 21.
Correct.
22 is, the work is complete, and we're waiting for the report to issue. I believe we have a commitment for June on that.
Yep.
That seems in line.
Okay.
And we even have them scheduled for the 23.
Okay.
Preliminarily, for preliminary work.
Right.
Yep.
I just want to make sure we're still on target, that June timeframe for 2022.
They're excited. I'm excited. Everyone's excited.
All right, good.
If it's possible to be excited about audits, this is why.
Right. It's wonderful. All right. Then we'll move on to budget transfer requests then with Mr. Dowd.
So in front of you, you have a memorandum with a budget transfer request, and some of this by policy, it may not need to be approved, but I do like to put them in front of the board to at least give you some visibility as to what this identifies as a trend in the district. And so the first one is a request for $105,000. We're moving from tuition Pinkerton in our special education and student services department to other professional services. We've experienced an increase in referrals and needs for required services, so this will shift some excess funds from our tuition line to the other professional services line. So it helps to identify, I think, that we have that going on. The next one is to propose a transfer, request a transfer to cover some additional hardware support contracts that we have. We're able to pull money from Joe's budget and consolidate it to cover that expense. So $16,000 is coming from computer consulting, tech new equipment, replacement equipment, and professional improvement training. So we've been able to have some favorable budget opportunities there, and we're transferring some of those funds to purchase additional hardware support contracts. So, and those come up, I think we made purchase for like a 3-year term initially, so it's not like an annual thing. So, and when I say hardware, that's server-side protection, right? So, not server, no. Yeah. Technology infrastructure support.
Right.
Yep.
So this isn't something on an annual basis, you said every 3 years is what this 16,000 is covering?
Correct, yeah.
Okay.
And just as a note on, as well on this, the equipment that we're having supported, it is on a replacement cycle, and it's interesting that the farther along we go in owning it, the more the maintenance costs tend to be. And
Like-
so it makes sense when you're...
Like a car, like
Right.
your house, like, yeah,
Right.
okay.
The change from tuition to other professional services, that's student services that they're not going to Pinkerton, they're going to somebody else, or?
We had fewer students at Pinkerton than anticipated.
Okay, all right, and you moved, okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Or, I should say, a lesser need on that budget at Pinkerton. So, yeah, I think that's probably the best way to put it. We don't have as much of a need there. We've had lower enrollment,
Yep.
and I think at Pinkerton, we for our services within the school, programmatic services, we haven't had as much of a demand as we thought.
Okay, yeah,
It's
that's
just on the
kind of what I
outside.
thought, yeah.
Yeah, it's just on
Thank
the
you,
outside.
yeah.
All right. So, any questions, board members? All right. I'll make a motion to allow the budget transfer from the tuition Pinkerton account description to the other professional services of $105,000, and the budget transfer from the 4 accounts of computer consulting, tech new equipment, tech replacement equipment, and professional improvement training to the info access fees of $16,000.
Second.
Melissa, would you mind taking the roll call?
Mr. Giard? Yes. Dr. Hubner?
Yes.
Mr. Cabarrus?
Yeah.
Mrs. Pellegrini?
Yes.
Mr. Smith, excuse me.
Yes.
Thank you, motion carries.
All right. We'll go on to the next one, summer hiring delegation. So, as we do every year with, typically the school board does not meet for about 6 to 8 weeks. So during that period of time, we invoke policy code GCF around delegating a school board member who can act on personnel matters. We will be looking to have one board member, if anybody would like to volunteer for this, in order to be that liaison for the superintendent.
I enjoy going down to the district office and saying hi, so I'll do it.
Does anybody else want this besides Dr. Hubner?
And any of you can always stop by and say hello. You don't have to have summer hiring authorization to do that.
All right. So then I'll make the motion to nominate Dr. Hubner as the summer hiring delegated person on the board.
I'll second that.
All right. Melissa, would you mind taking the roll?
Certainly. Mr. Giard?
Yes.
Dr. Hubner?
Yes.
Mr. Cabarrus?
Yeah.
Mrs. Pellegrini?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Thank you. Carl, you have the job.
And just to remind you, Dr. Hubner, and the public, that goes from June 15th through September 1st, unless the board meets before September 1st. So tag, you're it.
Sounds good.
All right. All right, next on the agenda is the superintendent eval progress report. So as we do with the policy and procedures, CBI, CBIR, today we will be going into a non-public to discuss the superintendent's evaluation. And then just for those at home, the next step will be that no later than May 31st, the board will go into a non-public to approve the written evaluation of the superintendent. And then no later than June 15th, the chair and vice chair will meet with the superintendent to review the evaluation. And then immediately following, there'll be a signed copy in the records, in the personnel file. So unless there's any comments, questions, that's what we'll be doing tonight. All right, moving right along. Let's go policies first reading. So board members, there are 6 policies in your packet for first reading. I don't know, Aaron, if you'd like to go over these?
I took notes.
You take copious notes, which are about as long as the policies, so.
No, well, it's part of that's copied in there too.
All right.
Okay, so policy ACAC, Title IX, sexual harassment and grievance. I'll read what she has here and then I'll add. Required policy not on the books, intended to replace former JBAA sexual harassment students and GBAA sexual harassment staff, both already repealed policies by the school board. And then I have a note here that this is brought to NHSBA based on changes of the law. This policy combines ACAA, which are 2, 3, and 4, actually, and combine some of the other policies here. Combines ACAA, ACAB, and ACA into ACAC. There are minor updates to Title IX and grievance process. There's a clarification made for a decision maker and who needs to be informed. There's an update to reference specific sections within the policy, and it works on defining steps for Title IX investigations, and our Title IX coordinator is Jess Parsons. Anybody wanted to know that? So, as stated above, ACAA, harassment and sexual harassments of students, this replaced policy JBAA, which was repealed in 2010, proposing to repeal this one now and replace it with ACAC, as noted above. ACAB, harassment and sexual harassment of school employees, is replaced policy GBAA, which was repealed in 2010, proposing to repeal this one now and replace with new ACAC as noted above. So I don't know if you want to take any action on those ones before we go on, or do you want me to do all of them?
I'd say let's do all of them,
Okay.
unless anybody has a question.
Any questions so far? Okay. AC, non-discrimination. This was last updated in 2019, but before the November 2019 and December 2019 revisions became available. Suggested changes include a name change and intention to meet basic policy requirements of SB 263 and incorporates revisions of GBA. This was a really long, lengthy policy. I forget, it was like 20-something pages, I think. So there are associated procedures that will be part of the district summer work with this policy. ACA, non-discrimination, recommended to appeal to point to policy AC.
Can I just jump back to the AC really quick? So one of the things they talk about is district ensures equal employment opportunities regarding age, color, creed, a bunch of different other ones. So the word creed is standard in New Hampshire. It always weirded me out, like, because creed could mean your political opinions, which makes it like, I believe in that to a certain extent, but I feel like at some point your political opinions could affect your ability to be employed. So.
Are you looking for an action on that, or?
No, this has come up in a few other things that's come up earlier in education, and I'd not seen that before until I looked at New Hampshire educational policy, and it occurred to me as an odd word to have in there, but it is standard in the state.
And just to speak to that, political affiliation is not a consideration when hiring. The questions and the vetting process that's used in identifying candidates for employment does not include anything related to politics or someone's system of beliefs.
Got it.
Okay. GCCBC, Family and Medical Leave Act. This was last updated in 2017. It's being brought forward due to minor changes in the law regarding number of hours and eligible employee needs to have worked to qualify for coverage. The change is from 1,250 hours to 900 hours. This is already being implemented by the district as well.
So for that would allow, like, say, paras to then be covered under this?
Correct.
Yes.
Whereas previously it was just teachers?
Generally, yes.
Okay.
It does allow paras now.
Yeah, I was doing the math out.
And that is it.
Seeing it was my first policy meeting, just want to say thank you. Learned a lot. Definitely good discussion between the administration and just everybody here. So just thanks for bringing the new guy along. All right. So if there's any questions or whatnot, but I'm looking for a motion to accept for these 6 policies for first reading.
So moved.
Second.
All right. Melissa, would you mind taking the roll call on that?
Mr. Giard?
Yes.
Dr. Hubner?
Yes.
Mr. Cabarrus?
Yes.
Mrs. Pellegrini?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries.
All right. Next is board comments and correspondence. I will start all the way to my left. Mr. Giard?
All set.
I don't have anything.
All right. I'm going to need to buy myself just a couple minutes, so I'm going to go to Mr. Cabarrus.
I am good.
Dr. Harper?
I just wanted to say that the unfortunate circumstances that have happened in Nashua has given me information that I'm going to impart in a non-public meeting to hopefully help Hampstead to be better protected from what happened to them. So I think our district will be in good shape. If it is not already, I just have to ask the questions that we were asking over there. So.
All right. No, agreed. As always, thank you, Joe, for the work you're doing and what will be implemented when you find the audit findings. So, thank you. So I had an email sent to me from a member of the public, and I'm gonna say I'm gonna tread lightly on this a little bit, but it's more just as awareness to the board and if we want to do anything about it or not. But I had a member of the community reach out about a possible presentation either at the library or somewhere else in public about the New Hampshire School Funding Fairness Project, which is about how the state is funding education for schools in the towns. You know, sometimes this can be a little divisive, you know, a little in communities as far as how it's positioned and how it's discussed. This member of the public had asked, would the school board want to take part in this or not? If you know, the New Hampshire School Funding Fairness Project does come to Hampstead and does present to the public, would we want to take part? Would we want to sponsor or we co-sponsor? You know, a couple questions like that. I thought Mr. Thompson might give a little bit of an overview of this to inform the board. I also forwarded along what Mr. Thompson had sent to us, I think last night or this morning on this. But I would like to ask Mr. Thompson to just give an overview of New Hampshire School Funding Fairness Project, and then we can discuss if and how we would want to take part in this.
So information was emailed to you about the New Hampshire School Funding Fairness Project. It's a nonprofit group that has been committed to looking at creating greater equity around how New Hampshire public schools are funded, and recognizes some inequities with the process as it currently exists with local property taxes funding the majority of public education. So this group has done a considerable amount of research. They've also been on the periphery of being involved with the current lawsuit involving the Conval School District. So, you know, they are advocating for a sort of redefining how the state funds public education and moving away from the current model. And there's a tremendous amount of information on their website about previous litigation going all the way back. You may remember in the 1990s there was the Claremont decision, and looking at other events that have taken place when it comes to school funding.
Any questions for Mr. Thompson on this?
Not currently.
So my experience, this is literally what I did my dissertation on, was looking at effective spending in New Hampshire. The Fair Funding New Hampshire does a good job. They do two different things. They look at how is it funded, and then how much should be spent for everyone to have an equal chance. Their research tends to be very good. I would not consider them an advocacy group. I would consider them an informational group. There is an advocacy group that does use a bunch of their information, as well as Carsey, UNH Carsey School for that, which they did like a $500,000 study that was funded by the state. But they're generally very good, and it's academic, and they try to stay away from the politics of it. It's more, here's the information of where we are, you know, you can make decisions on where you should go. So I tend to like the group, and I think that they give a good information on how to understand the differences in funding. For example, like the Conval School District is 5 different districts are wildly different in what each town or 5 different towns, and wildly different what each town pays. It doesn't affect Hampstead quite as much as it does some other districts, but it's still good information.
Okay.
So it's mostly informational, is what you're saying? How exactly did it say how they wanted us to potentially get involved?
They did not. They asked a few questions. You know, do we have interest in co-hosting or promoting it? Do we, you know, any of these things? And, you know, my opinion on this one is, I don't think it's something that we would want to co-host. I don't think it would be something we'd want to essentially quote unquote sponsor.
Right.
I do think that if this was being presented, I think it would make sense for at least a school board member to be there to answer any questions about the school board and how we develop our budgets, that kind of stuff, to answer questions, but not to be there to advocate one way or another for this. Because typically I think we do a really good job of staying impartial and being in, you know, middle ground without taking a stance on certain things. That could be a lightning rod. So that's my thought on this.
Yeah, I would agree with that. It was sort of kind of why I was asking that question about, is it informational and what is it exactly? And
Yeah, like Timberlane they came through Timberlane, they came to Exeter. The bulk of it is, here's a house in Moulton Borough, here's a house in, you know, Manchester, here's a house in Claremont, here's the different property tax rates, and here's how to understand. It's very hard to understand budget to property tax rate to property value across that, and understand how to norm out and see how much people are paying and what the difference is from town to town. So for example, if you're in the Lakes region, you tend to have high property value in vacation homes. So they tend to have very affluent school districts, but it's not really paid by the people that live there year to year, versus if you have a property poor community that doesn't have a lake, you may end up paying more. So, and that's kind of what they get into. It is, I would say that it is making information available that there should be a change, but not necessarily advocating for specific kinds of change, if that makes sense.
No, it makes sense. Yeah, I would think might be good for someone to attend, but I don't know if I'd go farther than that.
You know, board members, anybody? Anything else? Okay, so I'll plan on responding just as that, if everybody's okay, is yes, understood that it's going to come and it's going to be presented. Not something we'll jump headfirst into, but we'll most likely have one or more people there to tend to hear and answer any questions about Hampstead specifically.
Yep, that sounds good.
All right. Let's see, any other correspondence? Comment? Nope, I think I'm good. So move on to consent agenda with Mr. Thompson.
Yeah, we'll start with the personnel report. So in your packets, you will see personnel report. We have 2 nominations of professional staff members. The first one is Kara Vasilesco. Would nominate her to be the Hampstead Central School special education teacher. And then Alexis Bovair would be nominated to be the new math teacher at the middle school. Presently, that is to fill a grade 5 vacancy, but assignments can change.
All right. Okay. I'm looking for motion to accept the nominations of the 2 teachers.
So moved?
I'll second that. Melissa, would you mind taking the roll call?
Mr. Giard?
Yes.
Dr. Hubner?
Yes.
Mr. Cabarrus?
Yes.
Mrs. Pellegrini?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Thank you, motion carries.
Thank you, Melissa. And we go over to superintendent's report.
Yeah, I just wanted to start with a thank you. It is Teacher Appreciation Week. In Hampstead, we call it Staff Appreciation because we honor all staff members. After all, they are all educators. I appreciate the work that they do on behalf of students every day. Every day I'm just blown away by the commitment that our staff has to always doing what is best for our students. So a big thank you to them. And an appreciation for the PTSA and all of the events that they're doing this week to help make our staff feel like rock stars. So thank you. Additionally, I think Teacher Appreciation Week is also a good time for anyone that might be considering a career in education. It is very meaningful work. So if there are young people out there or people considering a second career, we'd love to have a conversation to explore a career in teaching. We have vacancies for next year that we're looking to fill. And I would ask folks can reach out to the building principals, they can reach out to me directly, and we could talk about whether or not a career in public education might be the right move for somebody. And also just like to say thank you to the staff and chaperones at the middle school for an incredibly successful Washington, D.C. trip. The trip is back in full swing. We took approximately 100 students and 12 chaperones with us to Washington, D.C., left on Tuesday, came back Friday of last week. I can't tell you the number of times our group was commended for how respectful, polite, well-behaved that they were. I'll give you one example. We had dinner at the Golden Corral, and the general manager of the Golden Corral on Monday or yesterday called Principal Milbury to say that they deal with school groups all the time. It was one of the best school groups that they've ever dealt with, and they actually they wrote the school a check so that they could buy the kids ice cream. So if that tells you anything. But everywhere we traveled, our Hampstead students really served this community well in terms of the reputation. And a thank you to the chaperones. There were 16-hour days, and you're on that whole time. So the crew that went down, they just did a remarkable job ensuring the safety of our children and making sure that everyone learned a lot and had a lot of fun. It was just a tremendous experience, so I thank everyone for that. Also, I know that there has been a lot of bus backups lately. I apologize for the inconvenience that causes, because we do recognize that causes an inconvenience. I know that Mr. Dowd has been in contact with the bus company, and a lot of it has to do with driver illness. There are no planned long-term absences. We should be able to get back to the staffing levels that we're used to, and we're hoping that this is just a little blip on the radar. And then also just wanted to maybe turn it over to Nicole, who's just going to talk briefly about state testing season.
Hi, everyone. Good evening.
Okay.
So as Mr. Thompson mentioned, we are approaching spring testing. We've already started doing some of our iReady spring diagnostic testing at the middle school. And we'll be doing SAS testing at the same time with both schools, and then Central will be doing their iReady at the end of the year. And I know it feels like a lot of testing, in particular for 5th and 8th graders, because they also take the science test in addition to reading, writing, and math. So I just wanted to kind of reiterate that the culture around testing in an elementary school is for us to continually learn and monitor students' growth and our own programming. So I think it's very important for parents in the community to know that kids should come in rested, fed, well slept, and they try their hardest, but we are not looking for perfection or even full competency at this point, but we are trying to identify areas for our instruction to improve and grow with these tests. Having said that, you know, I have the help of Kristen Karamatopoulos and Heather Mayu designing schedules for us that are very mindful of children and breaks so that they have nice balanced days. They do testing every other day. Makeups are done in the middle, so it's helpful if people are not absent. And let me think, what else here? I think most of the testing for SAS is just about 2 hours. Some of the programs are about 2 hours and 15 minutes. And it's essential that as many of our students participate in these testings because our state funding is attached to participation. So, and the way that they penalize us with opt-outs is a 0 on our scores. So we've been encouraging families to have their children participate in testing. If we go over 5% of our population opting out, all those scores count as zeros. And as we all know, grading-wise, it's very hard to recover from the 0. So I'm very grateful that, you know, families are having their students participate. I know testing is not what anyone signs up for when they want to be an educator. So this is a small piece of our programming. We are very much value the whole child, and the arts and all these concerts that we've been to recently and the UAs are incredibly important. But this is a part of our state law that we have to participate. Any questions?
And I would just add to that too, and I know I've made the board aware, you know, we have compliance monitoring in special education, and we do quite well when it comes to being in compliance with the law. One area that was raised as a concern is the number of opt-outs by children in special education on state assessments. And so there is a disproportionate number of students in special education who opt out. Opting out is always a parent's right, and we value parental input in those decisions. But at the same time, as Nicole has indicated, it would be our hope to have as many students participate as possible, because that data is used to drive our instruction for all populations of students in regular education or special education.
I would say one example of that is the creation of a new course called Adventures in Math this year at the middle school. We had a section that we needed to kind of change in 6th grade, And due to the large bubble of students, we were able to use that as an opportunity to kind of pilot a new program called Adventures in Math. And it's a hands-on kind of applied math for all sixth graders around statistics and geometry, which are things that we've gotten feedback from Pinkerton, and also our testing indicates, we could improve on. So it'll be curious to see like what that little extra boost does.
Right.
But that's the type of creative programming that I want to do with what we know about how our kids perform.
That's awesome. Yeah.
So for me, like, this is some of the data that I looked at, and especially it's great to look at gain year over year, not necessarily in other aspects, but it also, it allows you to look at, say, like one teacher might be great at factoring and another teacher might be great at division, and then they can exchange information on what they're doing, and it improves the school as a whole. So it does have value when they do these sort of things over time. So
Good. Thank you.
Sign language.
Anything else, Mr. Thompson?
That's all I have. If the board has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
All right, and we got other business, old business. I just say, on the theme of Staff Appreciation Week, just thank you to our staff, for everybody. I'll just give a story from this weekend, like I was mentioning earlier, sitting with somebody who's gone through the school system and, having, let's just say, it was a nice afternoon, just hanging out, and they asked, well, you being on the board, who's your favorite teacher? And it was so hard to say because I think I named off 20 teachers as I thought about from grades, I've been in the district, from, pre-K all the way up into 8th grade and now into high school and beyond. And it was really good just to hear and discuss and then hear that family. It wasn't just a former student, but former parents that said, oh my God, so-and-so's still there, that's amazing. And, even the teachers that sometimes can be a little hard on students, they also acknowledge like, I was a real jerk. I'm glad that teacher was hard on me, and I'm glad they still are being hard on students because some of them need it. But it was really great to hear, nothing but, just a lot of great, memories being discussed. So everything you're doing as staff, you're making a lasting impact, no matter, how hard the days are. Many good days, some hard days. We really appreciate it from parents and family and community. So just thank you very much. And it was great to see all the chalk on the entrance here. So, just like fun thing to see. So, anything else from anyone? All right, so thank you. At this moment, we will be going into non-public. I do not imagine we're going to come out of non-public with any announcements. So, I would like to make a motion to go into non-public under RSA 91A3 2A, which is the dismissal, promotion, or compensation of any public employee or disciplining of such employee or the investigation of any charges against him or her unless the employee is affected has a right to a meeting, and 2, request that the meeting be open, in which case the request shall be granted, as well as C, matters which, if discussed in public, would likely affect adversely the reputation of any person other than a member of the public body itself, unless such person requests an open meeting.
Second.
All right, Melissa, would you mind taking the roll call?
Mr. Giard?
Yes.
Dr. Hubner?
yes.
Mr. Cabarrus?
Yes.
Mrs. Pellegrini?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, and we'll go non-public at right on time, 8:20. I'm gonna call that.